Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our candidate forum for Utah's 4th Congressional District. This is one of our series of candidate forums. We're covering all of the major races in Utah this year. You can learn details on our website at slchamber.com. My name's Jonathan Hafen. I'm on the Salt Lake Chamber's Board of Governors and also an attorney at Parr, Brown, Gee & Lovelace. I am joined once again by my amazing co-host, Ginger Chin, who's the Executive Vice President over Public Policy for the Chamber. We are broadcasting live from the Chamber's offices.
Thanks, Jonathan. This is always fun.
Yeah,
so thanks for being
great.
here. So this forum will focus on business-related issues. We take issues from our business community and put those in the form of questions. Each candidate will have 30 minutes to answer the question, and depending upon the length of the answers is determined upon how many questions we get through. So without further ado, let me introduce our first candidate. Please welcome Congressman Burgess Owens, the Republican incumbent for Congressional District 4. Congressman, will you, just for everybody who's watching and who will live stream this later, tell us a little bit about you and why you are choosing to run again?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this. It's amazing how fast these years just fly by on us. This is, first of all, something I never, ever thought I would take part. It would never be part of my journey. That is being in the political arena. I've always been an entrepreneur. And when I left the NFL back in '83, it was to start a business to really do what I thought was going to be my mission, which was to help at-risk kids. I grew up in a remarkable community in segregated South Tallahassee, Florida, where I really saw what it was to not only believe in our country, but parents believed in their kids. There was a connection with parents and teachers, and the goal was just to go out there and build a good name for our community, for our race. By the time I got through with the NFL, I realized we were losing that. So the mission was to some kind of way be in a position where I had the finances, the network, the wherewithal to kind of bring this community back, not knowing that 40 years later, and I'll be here in Utah with that opportunity. Starting Second Chance for Youth was the nonprofit I started. That led to an understanding that unless we do things in D.C., unless we make changes there, our kids don't have a chance. If they can't read and write, they don't have critical thinking skills, if they don't love our country, if they don't believe that the future is a better place for them, then we're going to lose at the core of who we are as a culture. So that was what got me to making a decision to run for Congress. The only committee that I knew anything about was education, so that's my passion. Right now I'm running for the chairman of the Education Workforce Committee. And the other one is, that's my second term, is transportation infrastructure. And that's because Utah is the fastest growing state in the union. We do it right. We know how to innovate. We know how to collaborate. We know how to keep a budget. And we also know that if we want to keep our kids here, we have to make sure our economy is such that it keeps them here, that we teach them the right way. So being on transportation infrastructure, I figured I could be at the table. And the message was, let us be the model. Let Utah be the model. We do it right, and the rest of the country can follow our lead. So a long answer to a short question, but that's why I'm running. I think now is our time. One last thing. Of all the things I've done in my lifetime, whether it be NFL, business ownership, a nonprofit, my true legacy will be disrupting the educational workforce process institution. We need to make sure that every child has an opportunity to live the American dream. You can't do that if you can't think, if you can't articulate yourself. And we've failed our kids in a big way over the decades, so we have to get that back. I think we're in a position right now with a trifecta, House, Senate, and President Trump to do that. And the American people, they're aching now to make sure that every child, their children are going to be okay. So that's my mission. I think once that mission is accomplished, I will feel that this is a great chapter in my life.
A good reason to run for Congress
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Thanks so much. So you ready to dive into the issues?
Absolutely.
So the first thing we want to talk about is affordable housing. Again, Salt Lake Chamber, it's a group of businesses. And this is an important issue. Affordable housing, it impacts how much they need to pay their employees, whether we can attract employees to work for our wonderful Utah businesses. What role do you see the federal government having in helping Utahns to have more affordable housing?
Well, the first thing the federal government can do is make sure we don't have chaos. What's made Utah so unique is we believe in order. We sit down, we write out a budget. We might not agree on everything, but we have this conversation. We figure out what's the best to get our society, our culture moving forward. What we have right now at the border, an invasion. Some say up to 20 million people coming through our country. And they're coming to environments like ourselves, like ours. So what happens when you have supply and demand, you have more of a demand than we have supply, then we have, number one, we have a problem with apartments or rentals. If you hit off before that, you see our mortgage interest rates now 7%. When Trump was in, I think it was 2.5 in that range. It's almost impossible for people to begin that journey of having a home because it's too expensive. So then they want to go and get an apartment, save some money. That gets to be too expensive. So we have to get back to, first of all, getting some economic plans to bring our inflation down so we can afford that. Make sure that we are doing things in the correct way, in a sense of order, so we're not overwhelming our system, whether it be housing, whether it be hospital services, whether it be law enforcement. We cannot allow the federal government to overwhelm our system of order. So we're going to be addressing that, holding people accountable once we get the majority. This should never happen across the country where the border issues become every city's issues. And we haven't seen yet the impact because we've been pretty good at keeping things at bay. But at some point, we're going to see what's the impact of this invasion here in Utah.
Thank you so much.
So you've already talked about how education is your passion. So I want to just dive into education and training a little bit. Tell us about your views on federal support for strengthening educational vocational training systems that are really going to align with Utah businesses.
Okay. This is, again, my passion. This is an area I love to talk about. What we have to do, and I'll start off with something everybody saw a couple of days ago. Everybody remembers seeing Elon Musk's booster landing down. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. It is true innovation, something we've never thought we'd see in our lifetime. We need to apply the same thought process to education. We need to be able to bring new thoughts, new ways of approaching it, so every individual talent, whatever that might be, we can spot it early. There's something, we met Nick Saban a couple of years ago. He's talking about how they work in the sports arena, how they work with their kids. They can recognize, they can identify a young man in 7th grade. By the time he gets to 11th grade, they're giving him a scholarship. That's because in between they had this handshake. This young man knew exactly what Alabama was going to give to them, the opportunity, whether it be the colors, whether it be family in the area, whatever it might be. And Alabama had identified him as a great potential to make sure that everything he needed to know what it would take to qualify, he got that done. So by 11th grade, they had that in place. We need to do the same thing in workforce. So we're starting off much earlier to get our young people engaged to understand what they might want to do. Use technology. We have things, we're looking at something called a learning employment record. It's a digital record with a very simple language that goes cross-industry, cross-platform interoperability, and whatever certificates or experience will work in a classroom or outside is all put together on this record, which is individually owned. That allows that individual to link out with any industry out there and figure out what they need to do to become part of that. So innovation is what we need to bring to the plate. I'll say this, Utah is probably one of the very best when I talk about collaboration. Higher education, K through 12, the trade schools, we collaborate like nothing else I've seen out there. So what we have to do is make sure we're continuing to fine-tune that. And collaboration just means this. It means that those stakeholders have identified that our kids are the priority. Unfortunately, we have the higher education a lot across this country. You go to Ivy League, the priority is the institution. And how do you know that? Well, you have billions of dollars in endowments and kids leaving with all kind of debt and with degrees that mean nothing. So what we have here is opportunity to show what collaboration looks like. The product is a good kid coming out, being able to go to work. And if we do that, I think we'll be in good shape. One last point. What we can do on the federal side, first of all, stay in our lane. We should not be in the K through 12 lane. We should not be dictating from DC what should be happening, where the boys should be going to girls' bathrooms. That's what's coming out of DC right now. So we need to stay in our lane, number one. And the things we can do in the higher ed area is making sure we're keeping them accountable. It should be transparent. We should know what the result is. If the kids are coming out with degrees that mean nothing, then it should go back to the university. We used to call it lemon law. Universities should be playing a part of pushing out degrees that really do not ever allow the young people to catch up. So that's the one part. The thing that we can also do is have a database of best practices. And that database is not only in the educational realm, but we're also doing things like security. What works in Utah, can we put that in a database so someone in Florida or New York can say, maybe we can try this also. We don't have to go out and rebuild the wheel. So the things we can do is bring together information and data that the country can take advantage of. The things we should get out of is pushing ideology from DC to school systems across the country.
Just a follow-up to that, if you don't mind, Jonathan. As you are chairing the Education Committee, how do you work across the aisle with, bipartisanship? How does that work for you?
That's a great question. Part of it is that you do have some good people on the other side of the aisle. The unfortunate part about the other side of the aisle is that if good people step out of line, they will be pushed out by their own party. You have to understand what's happening in the Democratic Party right now. It has really gone woke. It's more or less run by the Marxist mentality. And so we have good people who want to do things, but if they want to stay around and get support, they have to stay in line. So it's kind of a collective. The way that we can handle this is make sure the American people are sending enough, first of all, enough America First on both sides of the aisle that our priorities are the same. I'll say this is the way Utah works. Utah, we have so many different ways of approaching different things. We have Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals, but we have a few things we can all agree on, and we come together and make it work. Our kids, our safety, our business running securely. So we agree on that. So we look at policies to make sure those things happen. We have to do the same thing in DC. The American people need to send people in the Democratic Party that are American first. They can still be Democrats. They can still have some things we might not all agree on, but the key value is America first. Safety for our kids, making sure that when our children come through the educational system, they love our nation and not look back and learn to hate it. So as long as we're doing that, we'll have a lot more conversations like the old days of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. It's amazing the things they got accomplished because the end game was the same.
That's great, thank you.
I think you covered what our next question was, and that's workforce development. So I'm going to skip down to infrastructure investment.
Okay.
Utah's growing. We need infrastructure. What should we be focusing on? How can you back in Washington help us make sure that we have adequate
Good
infrastructure?
question. And again, I'm thankful to have that first term, the second term, for our team to come together and figure out what it is that really makes a difference to Utah. And transportation and infrastructure was what came to mind. We're the fastest growing state in the union. We're the most collaborative, we're the most innovative. We have the highest percentage of entrepreneurs, which means we're risk takers. So I think the key is, first of all, having Utah at the table to figure out how we can handle our issues. One of the things that we need to do is figure out how we can push our growth south. How can the rural community get the infrastructure they need to grow, keep their culture, but grow? Something like Starlink. To be able to have a internet service, so no matter where you are in our state, you can still have a strong business. You can still get access to business ownership. You can still have telemedicine, which deals with other areas that the rural community does not have. So if we do that, first of all, we'll open up the opportunities of where we can grow in the future. Other things, get some of our federal lands back. We have to. There's too much, and this is what's happening. I think between 60 and 70% of Utah's land is owned by federal government. We're putting together something which there has to be an end time for that. At some point, it should go back to the state because we have ways of taking care of, not only take care of the land, but using it to create revenue, to help our growth. One of the things that we're very fortunate with, and again, this speaks to who we are as a remarkable culture. Not only do we have the opportunity for inland port, which will allow us to be the distribution marketing hub of the West, because we have all these great, remarkable business options throughout our state that we can now have a place they can bring it to, and they can ship it out of the state or ship it in. And then we have, of course, the Olympics coming, which we can highlight everything that we're about. So between the inland port, which we're going to have a big demand on making sure that we can show how that works, take the pressure off the West Coast, show what it is to be in a right-to-work state, and we can actually keep prices low. Be innovative so it doesn't take forever to get things accomplished. Have kids that we're raising here and educating here that can actually get a job here and stay here. Those are the kind of things we can do with Inland Port, with the Olympics. We'll have a chance in, 2032, 24, okay, to highlight the very best of innovation. We can show folks what it is to take a culture that we're very independent people, and that's just who we are. If it's not convenient, if it's not consistent, we'll get in our car and go, because we just don't want to be dependent on something just, we missed it and we're waiting 30 minutes. That doesn't work for us. But for us to get in a position to get our transportation system in place, our double rail system, whatever our road system is set up the way we should, then and also look at ways we can keep our pollution down. That's something else we can do very well with. We can have a place where when people come to Utah, they see how innovation works, how we have collaborated to prepare for this, how the things we put in place, the infrastructure, will now last us for generations to come, because it's not going to go to waste. So to me, it's one of the most exciting times for Utah to really show what we've done so well with over the years.
Thank you.
So you talked about the housing shortage being supply-demand. And with housing being so expensive, it's requiring two incomes oftentimes, and it's throwing work-life balance out. People just don't have a work-life balance.
Yeah.
They're very busy. How would you promote federal policies that support work-life balance for employees?
What a good question. And let's go back to the way that, and I think it's personal. I think part of the issues we have is not just by accident. When you start looking at bringing chaos, or you start bringing more pressure to the family, so that no one could, you have now, everybody's doing their thing, have to go out just to work 24/7 just to make a living, then that puts pressure on the family. It puts the pressure on even us deciding how many kids do we want. So I think we have to understand we truly are at war, and it's not something we see, it's a spiritual war. We have to understand this. There's an ideology that hates faith, family, the free market, and education. We love faith, family, free market, and education. That's what makes us who we are. So how can this force destroy the family? How about bringing inflation into it? And I made a point because when I was growing up, family of five, mom was at home until the youngest one had moved on, and then she she started working as a teacher. But mom was at home, dad was able to work one job, and yet not only provide for our family, put a savings account for every one of our kids, travel, make a save. This is because the dollar was worth more than it is today. The more the inflation comes in, the more of us have to go out to work. We have families that don't see each other until holidays because they're both working, one in a day, one at night, and then you wonder why the family unit's not working, not staying together the way it is, or why the kids are growing up without the support they need. So life balance, let's make sure we handle this inflation. Let's make sure we open up our energy base. Energy is our true gateway to freedom and success. The cheaper things are for us to make a living, to buy a home, to buy our goods, to buy our food, the more options we have to build our dreams. And the first thing the Biden administration did, we were looking at being not only energy independent, but energy dominant, which is where we're heading off to. First thing they did is cut out the Keystone Pipeline. We got rid of so many, tens of thousands of jobs, many union jobs, and instead we then pushed those products out internationally. How about if we go ahead and dig for the goal we have, the liquid gold we have in this country, allow Americans to work for it, allow us to teach our kids what it is to go out and find the rare minerals, and find these industries like the coal industry or the mining industry, which is remarkable. We have so much opportunity, but we're not teaching our kids that. Now, China is teaching their kids how to do what we're not, because they know that we're pushing all our manufacturing and so forth to them. So, so to answer a long answer to a short question, I'm sorry about that, but what it comes down to is let's make sure that our American people are working. That's life balance is part of that. When you're working, you feel good about what you're doing, you can save, you will figure out a way to take your time out to do other things. Let's make sure we're taking inflation down. Let's make sure that we are teaching our kids And so we're comfortable and confident when they grow up. We can watch them succeed, and that's all part of life balance. So being successful, seeing our kids grow up the way they want to. It's really the American lifestyle that we're after. And to do that, we have to make sure we're doing our part to keep the cost of making that happen go down a little bit.
Well, you almost answered the next question, which is about economic growth. Anything you want to add to economic growth? Utah's a thriving economy.
Yes.
How do we continue?
I think the biggest part of that, when the whole concept of America First is that we build in America. We produce, we manufacture. We have so much talent. So many people just want to roll up their sleeves and go to work. But when we push everything outside of our country, then we leave a void. We can't do that. And all of a sudden, those who could feel good about themselves, their self-esteem goes down when all of a sudden they need government help, or they can't get whatever it might be that they're going through. So a big piece of this economic process is let's refocus on making sure we're training our kids to do the work that right now we have to import. Okay? We look across the world, we see all this great talent. There's a lot of talent out there. India and China, you go where you want to go. We can do the same thing here if we decide to put that focus here. We have young people. When I talked about that learning employment record, how about if we start thinking about our kids as young as kindergarten as being part of our workforce? What does that mean? Well, it means they learn. We teach them how to share. We teach them how to be nice and have conversations where they can realize we don't have to win every single one of them. Little things that we can do to have our kids to learn that they can assimilate into a society in which they can be proud of, number one. And the earlier we start with that, the better we are. And we need to make sure we're starting early enough so by the time they get to 7th, 8th grade and 8th grade, not only the kid, but the parents know where their skill set might be. They can now say, well, you know what? You don't have to go to 4-year college. You can go and get a trade over here, and you will be very happy. You can make a living. You can buy a home and build your dreams. But when parents and kids have those options and they understand that, then education is a blast because you know what you're doing it for. You're heading off into some place, and you know where you're going to land when it's all said and done. So that's a big piece of it. It's not just getting rid of the rules, which is another piece of it. Getting rid of rules and regulations that stop businesses. And that's going to come when we have America First in place, but also make sure that we have an investment in our children like we do with our military. It's not a matter of cost. It's really a matter of investment. That's where we look at military. It does cost. Know that the return on investment is safety. Well, we should look at our kids and educating them the same way. It's a cost now, but 10 years with a group of people ready to go to work, proud of who they are, giving back, then that investment gives us another generation of a legacy of good Americans.
That's great. I'm checking the.
I think we got time for one more before we
question,
wrap
yeah.
up. It'll be
fast.
two
I'll talk
more.
too much. Okay.
The next one we're going to pivot to, and this of course is hand in hand with economic growth, and that's tax policy. Yeah. So this is our magic wand question for candidates. Now, as you have now a magic wand, you don't have to worry about anybody but yourself. If it were just up to you, what changes would you make to America's tax policy to help Utah businesses be more successful?
Well, the upside about where we are is we know what works. A lot of this is not hypothetical anymore. What Trump did with his tax cut and job program worked big time. At the highest employment of women, veterans, and minorities for decades. We had the lowest amount of inflation for decades. So we know it works. We also understood that because he brought it, I think, from 30-something down to 21, the tax, the jobs are coming back to America. Why? Because business owners wanted to return on investment. And we can be competitive. This is the best business environment that anybody can be in because we do care about our workers. We do care about the environment. We want to make sure they're safe and clean. We do all the right things, and business would love to come back, but we have to give them incentives because if they're going to lose money here, that's not the way business runs. And by the way, we need to start teaching our free market. That's another. Oh my goodness! If we don't teach our kids what the free market does, what capitalism is, why we can look at a rocket come back to Earth. Why that happens is because of capitalism. Somebody's thinking, what can I do to do something different and make sure that it's given a better value, a better cost, and it's exciting to look at. I mean, that's what we learned much deal with that. So to go back to what I was saying before, the tax program that President Trump put together worked. We need to make sure the American people have more money in their pockets. It's not the government's money, it's our money. We expect them to do good things with it, not just waste it. We have, for instance, the Department of Education, that's $87 billion a year. You talk about a group of people doing nothing but failing us. Not only are they not making sure our kids are in good shape, that they're learning, we should never, ever be okay with being middle of the road worldwide with education. For us to say it's okay to be 20, 30 in a world with reading, writing, and arithmetic, that is ridiculous. We don't do that with sports. So if $87 billion per year is going to education, let's look at ways of taking some of that money back, putting it down into the states, to the districts, allow accountability to happen there, put a database of showing what works best across the country, and then let the American people say, if you're not doing the job in my district and you're not competing with these guys in Utah, we're going to find somebody else that's going to do the job to compete with Utah. So that's the way we have to look at this. It's really bringing innovation, not buying into the fact that we're a country that can't do a lot better. And I think that's the tax policy we have has to put the money, the power back in American people's hands so we can go out and build our dreams.
Thank you.
So we have just a few minutes remaining. Is there anything you would like Utah businesses to know about you?
First of all, and I say this every chance I get, I am so thankful for the business environment we have here. What Utahns need to understand is that this is very unique. This is not something that happens across this country. Not only the idea we have a culture that we teach our kids early how to go out and take risks. We're the only ones that tell our kids, go someplace that nobody wants to visit. We celebrate when they leave, we celebrate when they come back. But what they learn in the process is risk-taking, empathy, being outside your comfort zone. And so they come back here and they apply that to a culture that is very hard to replicate. So I want to thank the business owners for taking the risk, because businesses is what powers the middle class. The middle class, the more robust we are, the freer we are as a country. That's where our culture comes from. The middle class is empathy, is faith, is having a legacy of a name we want to pass down to our kids, a good name that we want our neighbors to believe in, service. That's what the middle class does better than any other sector, any other class. The bigger that class is, the freer we are. The more that class is shrunk, the worse we are in life. And we have to protect that middle class. The business owners do that by taking risks and going out there and falling, failing, getting back up and going again. So I want to thank the business owners here for doing that. I want to thank Utahns for just holding on to this remarkable culture that brings people like myself. I came because my 6 kids came to go to school out here. You visit, and before you know it, you're going to stay. That's the way it works. So I want to thank you guys for that. Again, we have an opportunity to make a big difference in our country. So let's keep doing what we do. Let's keep the bar high. This for ourselves, for our kids, and we do that, the rest of the country will benefit from it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We know it's a busy time for you right now, and for you to take 30 minutes and come in and share your perspectives, it means a lot. Thank you so much. 30
minutes. Did I talk that much?
You had a lot to say, and that's what we're all here for. So,
okay.
Yeah, thanks again for being with us. Really
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And we'll take a break now as we invite in our next candidate.
All right, so now let's welcome Katrina Fallick-Wang. She's the Democratic contender for Congressional, that's a mouthful, Congressional District 4. Katrina, tell us a little bit about you. We want to get to know you and why you're running for office.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, thank you to the Chamber for having me here today and giving me this opportunity to share who I am and why I'm doing all of this. My name is Katrina Fallick-Wang. I grew up in a really remote rural community up in Washington State. This community actually was entirely off-grid farming community. And growing up that way, not only did I learn the value of hard work, but I also learned how integral our environment and the way that we take care of it is to our prosperity. And I also learned a really important lesson, which is how to set aside differences and work with people who you have to live with, who you may not agree with. And really the ability to do that and focus on what is best for the community, setting aside individual differences. So that was in Washington State. In 2008, I moved my family here to the Salt Lake Valley. I was attracted here by the growing tech industry at Silicon Slopes. And also, all of my sisters live here, and I really wanted to raise my children around family. So that's what brought me here. The reason that I decided to run for office is, like I think a lot of us, I've noticed that politics has reached just a really high level of emotion. And I felt like too much time is being spent focusing on culture wars and ideological differences, and not enough time focusing on actually solving problems for Americans and for the people of Utah. So as a non-politician with like a fresh perspective, I wanted to join and see what I could do to bring my experience and really work across the aisle to focus on the places where we are similar, and less on the places where we're different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So let's dive into those issues. That's what we want to talk about today.
Me too.
The first one is affordable housing, and this is a business community. Those are the folks that are watching today. And affordable housing is a challenge, not just particularly to the rising generation who'd love to stay in Utah, but they're worried they're going to get priced out of the market, but Utah business owners who need wonderful employees like we've had historically. So question for you then is, what's the answer? What can we do at the federal level to make housing more affordable here in Utah?
Yeah, thank you so much. This is absolutely the number one thing that people have talked to me about as I've traveled around talking to people, and it is the number one thing. It's a concern of young people who are graduating. It's a concern of those people's parents that they're graduating and taking their families out of state. And like you said, it's an issue for businesses that we're losing our young, amazing, bright minds to other states. The first thing that I would focus on at a federal level is getting corporate landlords out of housing. In my mind, Utah homes should be owned by Utah families and ideally built by Utah builders. We don't need out of state or even out of the country, like international corporations. We don't need our Utah families having to compete with them for housing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, our workforce. You touched on it a little bit with housing, and housing is an infrastructure to our workforce. But education and training is so important to our businesses. What are your views on federal support for strengthening education and vocational training to better align with our local businesses here?
Yeah, so Utah is unique in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that's exciting is that Utah is such a young state. We have so many young people. One of the ways that it's less exciting is that unfortunately we spend less per student here than a lot of other states. So the first thing that I would do is really focus on fully funding K through 12 education. We need to make sure that all of our young people are graduating high school with the knowledge and the emotional and study skills, organizational skills, and security that is critical to allowing them to succeed in secondary education and the workforce. And then second to that, I think the key part of making sure that those that those young people are fitting with the needs of Utah is expanding internship and apprenticeships in the trades. I have a lot of young family members that are going that way, and it's such an amazing opportunity for young people to learn while working and be able to start their career without a ton of debt, which will help them in buying houses and staying here. So yeah, those are the things that I would focus on.
So with fully funding K through 12 education currently right now, that's predominantly state funded through taxes. So would you supplement that with federal dollars, and how would that work for you?
Yeah, I think that there is a role for the federal government to play here. To my mind, it's sad that we have left this just to states to deal with. At the federal level, really the educational outcomes of our upcoming generation, those are a concern to us as a nation and as a society. And I think the federal government has a role to play in stepping in and making sure that all states have kind of like a level playing field, and that all children are going to get what they need from K-12 education. That is something that at the federal level we have promised students, and so we need to deliver on that promise.
Great, thank you.
Let's move on to another topic, infrastructure. We're expanding, we all know that, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
but
it's
when
great.
you expand, you need infrastructure to keep up, or the expansion is not going to go well. So again, looking at the federal government, in particular the federal level, where do you think the federal government should prioritize infrastructure investment here in Utah so that we can continue to successfully expand?
So I think that the federal government has done a pretty good job so far. There was the Infrastructure Act that passed and brought billions of dollars to Utah to improve things like roads, energy, and also to make broadband available to our rural communities. Kind of going back to the educational thing, I think making broadband internet available to those rural communities helps the children in those communities get an equal amount of education, and also helps young people to stay in those communities and have employment in those communities. And I think, unfortunately, it's really sad that this is one of those things. This is one of those things where I think we need to set aside ideological differences. Just because a bill is floated by one party or another, we have to be able to look first and say, is this going to help Utah families and help Utah businesses? And just sign that first, like put that first, and deal with the ideological stuff. That is not something that should be a part of legislation. So.
Let me just ask a follow-up, something that Representative Owens mentioned, and that's the inland port. I'm sure you're familiar with that. That's, I suppose, infrastructure, something that's intended to help all of Utah, including rural Utah, that's so important to so many of us. Do you have a view on the inland port, what's happening out there? Good idea, bad idea, changes you'd make?
So with the inland port, I think this is something where it's good that we support at the federal level, but then I would really want the local communities to be the people who decide where those dollars go and how that infrastructure is implemented within the state. So before we implement something like an inland port, I think it's important that we take into consideration the business needs of the rural communities and also the needs of the communities where we're going to put that port. And I think that there is some conversations that need to happen there on a local level, but I really see the federal government's responsibility as providing the infrastructure, providing the resources, and then letting the people on the ground, the people who are here, be the people that decide where and how those get allocated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you touched on it just a little bit, bipartisanship, and how do you work across the aisle with the opposing party? You said we got to put the ideology aside and work on the policy. How would you do that when you're at the federal level?
Yeah. So I think this is one place where being a political newcomer is really a benefit. I haven't ever been in office before, so I don't have any of those commitments or prejudices really pushing me either way. I am a Utahn. I have been a small business owner. And I currently work in the tech sector in Utah. And I think if I center what I know about Utah businesses, about Utah families, and I center those ideas, that is really, like I said, that's how we bridge that gap. We are more similar than we are different. And I know that as Utahns, we all want the same thing. We all want a thriving economy. We want healthy children, we want clean air and clean water, and we have different ideas about how to make that happen. But I think we approach those as just that, different ideas. We all bring our ideas to the table. No idea is a bad idea. And we look at it that way. We look at it as ideas how to solve common problems, and then go from there.
Thank you. So right now, many Americans are experiencing that their work-life balance is in peril. It's just not, there's not a balance. That's just a misnomer.
Yeah.
How would you promote federal policies that support work-life balance for employees, benefiting families and businesses?
And businesses.
Well,
Yeah. So this was really one of the tipping points that made me decide to run for office. In 2001, after the pandemic, when there was all this conversation about the Great Resignation, I got really curious about who it was that was resigning. And I looked into that, and for anyone that is a working mom like me, they already know the answer. It was moms. It was working moms, and it was unfortunately mostly women who were mid or senior level in their career. And I was like, this is really unfortunate. Utah is already very low. It's the worst in terms of pay equity for women. And I was like, we can't, this is really unfortunate. We're losing these great female minds and female leaders. One of the things that I think we learned out of that is remote work can be effective. I think I would encourage businesses where it makes sense to implement remote work. I think that is a great opportunity for businesses to have a broader pool of employees, and a great opportunity for employees to have some of that work-life balance. I also really strongly feel like we need to fund childcare, early childhood education, and fund childcare at the federal level. Childcare is actually the best infrastructure investment that we can make from an ROI perspective. And it takes a little while to pay off, but when countries really, really invest in that, they have a higher GDP, and they have less education costs and lower crime. So that's how I would focus on that.
So I have another question on economic growth. You know, we always pride ourselves here in Utah. We are number one or number two in the economy. It goes back and forth depending upon the day, and that's really great. We want to stay on top, but what are your plans at the federal level to promote economic growth in Utah to support local businesses in achieving their goals?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about how I was a small business owner, and I had this experience when I was at the fair a couple months ago talking to voters, and two women came up and they were talking to me. They'd just started a business together, and I was asking them, okay, so what do you need? What do you need from the government? How can I as a representative help you? And the thing that they shared, the struggles that they shared were the same struggles that I remember experiencing when I was starting my business. Utah is growing, and Utah is really excitingly a state of entrepreneurs and pioneers. Like, we are just a people that go out, we have new ideas, we start new businesses. What I would do is restructure some of the tax code. One, to close loopholes. Two, when you're a small business or a new business just starting out, you are largely taxed the same as a large business who's been around for 100 years. But you don't have the same access to deductions and depreciations that those businesses have. That makes it really hard to get your footing under you, to fully staff, to get your supply chain in place. So I would create sort of holdouts and tax relief for new businesses, say in like the first 3 years, that would give them the opportunity to build a strong foundation, get really stable, and then prosper. And then we have more small businesses succeeding, we'll have more big businesses succeeding, so.
Thank you.
Let me just follow up on that.
Yeah.
We like to talk to the candidates about tax policy. That's something that's important to Utah
Yeah.
businesses. You've just given us one idea that you think would make a difference in that area. I guess the follow-up question is sort of our magic wand question. Let's say you could do that from a tax policy
yeah.
standpoint. Are there any other things that you would use your tax magic wand to accomplish at the federal level to help people in Utah?
Yes. When I started running for office, I didn't have really a strong grasp of tax policy, which I think a lot of everyday citizens don't. But I really started digging into it. I really started educating myself, and it was really fascinating and great to see all kinds of exciting areas where small tweaks to things like sales tax is not really like a federal issue, but we do have some impact there. But like small little tweaks just to where the levels are, where things break up into the next bracket. Small things like that done thoughtfully and with a wide range can have really, really a big impact. I think from tech, I'm all about like efficiency, right? Like efficiency of like, the 10% improvement. I think there's a ton of 10% improvements that we could make in taxes that would provide huge benefits for citizens and for businesses without putting much additional strain anywhere. That is going to require a lot of working across the aisle. So that's what I'm really excited about doing.
Thank you.
I have a little follow-up on that.
Yeah.
The Tax Cut Jobs Act of 2017, that is set to expire in 2025.
Yeah.
That's going to have some big implications on businesses.
It really is. It really is. That is, I guess my hope is that Congress, regardless of whether I'm there or not, will choose to renew that. But I think those are exact cases where, again, using my background in tech, we've done that. We've seen that it has worked, and we've seen where it hasn't worked. And so now it's expiring. That's an opportunity for us to go in and make those 10% improvements.
I think we have time for another question, and you keep referencing that you're from the tech sector, which I love that. So I kind of want to talk about the tech sector just a little bit.
Yeah.
We know that the tech sector is a big driver of Utah's economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
And how will you promote technological innovation and support tech startups at the federal level?
So through tax initiatives, with, like I was saying, with small businesses, I think that's one place. Something that I'm really excited about is the ability two things really. One, the ability to use tech to really partner business and environment together. I think there are some exciting things that we can do there to improve energy, improve water conservation, while building strong, good-paying tech businesses. I think there's just a natural harmony between those two. At the federal level, my job would be to get the permitting and the red tape out of the way of that. We have too much. We need to be able to move faster. So that's one of the things with tech is we need to get rid of some of those impediments to progress. Tech moves fast, and it's going to be hard for the government to keep up, but we got to try.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you have the last few minutes remaining. Is there anything that you would really like to emphasize with the business community that is really your position?
Let's see. So I talked about tech. I talked about the synergy between energy and environment. Something that I'm really excited and really passionate about is the idea of moving our chip manufacturing back to the United States. It's so important for our national security. It gives us the opportunity to innovate in ways that we haven't before, and it provides really good jobs if we bring that chip manufacturing back to the U.S. where it belongs. So.
Do you have any burning last questions?
Can I ask just one more question before we wrap up? And it's something I would really, I've enjoyed hearing your perspective today, like I'm sure our business owners and folks out that are watching this have enjoyed it as well. So we've talked about rising costs in different areas.
Yes.
Another one is healthcare. So I would really love to hear whether you have any solutions in mind back at the federal level, things that could be done to try to help tamp down those rising healthcare costs.
Yeah, rising healthcare costs are absolutely, again, that's one of those things where like what's good for people and what's good for business a lot of times are the same thing. When families pay higher healthcare costs, businesses also end up eating some of that cost. In a lot of cases, a large portion of it. And I think that's where the federal government needs to step in and implement some cost controlling measures, specifically with regarding prescription drugs. I'm not sure exactly what the answer is there. That's one of those things where I think we need a lot of people at the table. We need everyone at the table. We need doctors at the table. We need pharmacies at the table. We need American citizens at the table and business leaders at the table. But I do think that the federal government needs to step in and make sure that there are some guide rails in place so that we can keep healthcare affordable for people. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Our time is up. Thank you so much for being with us today. Best of luck in your campaign. Really appreciate the time that you took today.
Thank you so much. It was really great being here. Yeah. I love talking about this stuff. So.
Well, I think people love hearing about it too. And so to the folks that are watching, that ends our candidate forum for the 4th District. We hope you'll join us on the next one. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, and our thanks to the Salt Lake Chamber staff and to PICSUM for live streaming. Thanks for joining us.